Hey, happy Monday. So this week we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the 2018 Domaine Prieur Rouge and pretty much going through their wish list one by one because there's quite a few allocation I am getting, and I feel like it is really hard to kind of get through all of them all at once. Now, if you have not heard of this winery or is unfamiliar with Domaine Prieur Rouge, I'm going to include another video where I did a deep dive when their 2017 arrived not too long ago. But here I'm just going to give you three quick bullet points. Now, the first one is that this domain was established back in 1988. It was established by Henry Frederick Roch, and he was already a member of Ladoix winemaking family and also the co-director of Domaine Romanée-Conti or DRC. So this guy really has some of the craziest I guess background you can never think of coming out of Burgundy, and because he only makes very small amount, we're looking at maybe 7,000 bottles of each of their or 3,000 bottles sometime, or even smaller, of very specific Premier Cru, Climat, and Grand Cru. They are kind of very hard to come by, and it's not quite as internationally well known as the Ladoix and DRC of the world. But for people who are collecting Burgundy and who have tried them before, they can taste the quality in the bottle, and it's very highly thought after. Especially, unfortunately, the owner has passed away in November of 2018, making his wine even more valuable up to the 18 vintage, because that is essentially his very last vintage that he's making wine. Now, second bullet point, of course, comes in the vineyard, because no matter how amazing the producer and the owner is, you have to start with the vineyard. And in his vineyard practices, he's very big on all biodynamic and organic practices, and he does a lot of very labor-intensive farming, including taking individual berries only when it's ripest or when it falls off the vine for certain one of his labels. It is quite special. And number three, of course, is his very unique winemaking style. He does 100% wild, natural yeast, whole cluster fermentation, and he does choose to do pure bottling for some of his bottling. Now, I'm going to take a moment to talk about pure bottling because a client bought a bottle from their 2017 vintage that went through that pure bottling process, and he's curious why the 2018 didn't go through any of the pure bottling process. And of course, I didn't want to just answer him until I talked to the winery. And it's an interesting conversation to have with a winery. So first of all, let's talk about what is pure bottling. Essentially, pure bottling is a process where when the wine go from the barrel to the bottle, it touches no air and it's not treated with any additional chemicals, sulfur, sulfide, any of that. So it's very natural and a very unique way of doing bottling. So when I asked the winery worker and representatives from Prieur Rouge why they're not doing it for the 2018, or what's their reasoning behind doing it for a certain level of 17 and not other, because it doesn't seem like there's a rhyme and reason. And I think the bottom line is, honestly, if it's a one sentence explanation, that it is a winery decision. But the way I think about it, the way I feel after talking to them, that winemaking is not a pure science. There's a lot of, I think, artist instinct, winemaker's instinct in there. So at the end of the day, there's not a hard cut and dry rule on what make them go, okay, if this all happens, we're pure bottling this, and if it doesn't pure bottle. And it's such a new thing as well, and they haven't fully understand what it really does to a wine in the long term. To be quite honest with you, I don't think they wanted me to share with you with that, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But they say as a whole, they feel like the pure bottling opens up the wine faster because there's zero treatment. So it just it doesn't have that sulfite to kill the germs. So they feel like wines that has a firmer and like more austere structure, they sometimes would choose to use that to kind of get a wine to open up faster. And they said, so compare 2017. I like how the winemaker will always say, oh, 2017 is a deeper vintage, but what they're trying to say is a more difficult vintage, in fact. So then they felt like a lot of the wines in the 17 need that peer bottling, whereas 2018 was considered one of the really amazing vintage so far. The weather was great, production was up, the wine is more approachable, is softer and more elegant and more generous on the palate and the nose. So then they actually feel like the peer bottling won't help it, so then they decided not to do it. So yes, I'm sorry if there's no like really hardcore, hard and dry answer to your question, but essentially at the end of the day, it's their winery's decision, and they just felt like the 2018 doesn't need it. Now today, I'm also going to talk about, I have a long list of allocation or wish list for the 2018 pre-arrival. But today I want to start off with the 3 most affordable wines. So even if you're new to Burgundy, if you do have the budget, I highly recommend getting 1 or 2, if not all 3 of this bottle to try out, because the way he puts, like the care he puts behind in all level of his wine. So it doesn't matter if it's just from a lesser known vineyard or it's just their Bourgogne style. The heart he puts into it, the winemaker, the treatment is all top notch. It's the same reason why if you get even a Bourgogne from Domaine Ladoix, is going to be pretty pricey, and people will happily pay the price because it's worth every penny for the experience and the love that they put into the wine. So I do have 3 of those more everyday value wine from Prieur of the 2018 vintage for you to try. Now the first one is their Koto Berganion. And that one is only 125 bottle compared to normally 140 elsewhere. Hence is the advantage of doing pre-arrival. These are usually made with their 30 to 40-year-old vine. It's the most like easy drinking, most approachable, but it's a very high quality and very unique winemaking, kind of a Bourgogne Rouge. So definitely give that a try. Now the second one that I'm offering today is going to be the Clau Rouge, which is another label that they only make about 7,000 bottles a year, and these are from 60-year-old vine, from quote-unquote your lesser vintage, but I think it's some of the best quality for the price you're going to pay to get your hand on his wine, because everything else really starts at $400-500 and up, but for less than 200, this wine I think really overproduced for the quality, and there's only 7,000 bottles. So it's kind of hard to come by, even though it is lower price. And the third one is kind of a really cool one. This is from Savigny, and is the Gollard Vineyard. It is the very new Climat that they just purchased back in 2017. So this is actually the very first year they made a wine from this Climat. And unfortunately, the last vintage for Henry Frederick Rouge, because he passed away in the end of 2018. But there is a nice video of him talking about the vineyard on their website. Essentially, this is 1.5 hectare that they purchased in this region, and 1 hectare of it is red, which they use to make in this wine. The vineyard he picked this specific block is because it's got a southwest exposure. It was a slight elevation, it's not on the valley flow, and has really great wind flow, so you don't see as much of that spring frost. So it's a healthier vine, and it's older vine as well. And the last thing, the one thing that he was really specific on, and in adding and purchasing new lane to add into his label, is the fact that the soil was being treated correctly. It's still alive, it's not heavily treated with chemical, and of course old vine. So this is the very first time this wine is available for the public. I haven't personally had a chance to taste them, but for only $187 a bottle, I think it's worth the investment to give it a try, because again, the first and the last vintage technically made from him, from this particular region. Now, disclaimer one more time, thank you very much for listening. I do want to let you know that this is a wish list only. I am somewhat on a handshake deal with a legit importer. I think he said I can most likely get up to about 24 bottle per label, but I will be bringing out more of their fancier Prieur and Grand Cru later down the week. But I want to start off with the most entry level and the most affordable wines for people to really jump on it. So like I said, there's only maximum of 24 bottle of each label. So if you're interested, definitely let me know as soon as you can by replying to this email or just reaching out to me at www.angiesum.com. We will have the wines reserved for you for pre-arrival in 2021. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.